My name is Gale Burns, and I'm sort of hosting tonight, and I'll be reading later on. We've got a wide mix of, I think, smashing poets for you. In the first half, we'll have Conor Byrne, followed by Raymond Antrobus. Then we'll have a little break for you to buy hundreds of books and get some more drinks. And then in the second half, we'll have somebody called Gale Burns finish off with Joe Bell, the wonderful Joe Bell. But I'm very delighted to kick off with Conor Byrne. They were recommended to me by, there's a poetry promoters Facebook page, can you believe? And I said, it'd be great to have a poet who was under 30. I think all of us are over 30 besides Conor. I saw their video on YouTube and thought it was very stunning. Conor's a poet from Brighton. He now lives in London, whose self-published pamphlets explore ideas of gender and relationships. They have performed at festivals, nationally and internationally, competed in slams, and now help run poetry nights in Brighton while working on their first full-length show and collection. Please welcome Conor.
Thank you. I love the little table. I really like it. I want one at every reading, please. So I'm Conor, I'm 21, and I'm gonna keep saying that while I still can. So anyway, before I start, I just want to give a general sort of content warning for my poems, for sort of discussions of homophobia and transphobia and abuse and working in retail, so all of that might come up. The first poem that I'm going to read is called Quiz Night. She says, I have a question. Do you have a... So you have a... Do you want to get... What is the... How would you have... I say, I will try to explain, but please think before asking these questions again. She says, how do you have? Picture someone right now in your head. What is it? I say, imagine a colour wheel. Gender is like, she says, do you mind what I keep saying? I'm sorry I keep saying. I think it's just because I see you as a... I just think you are a... You're very, though. If I was a... I would, she says. She says, who could have guessed we'd end up getting into all this? I say. This poem is called On Holy Saturday, and it's on YouTube. On Holy Saturday. I kissed a boy on Holy Saturday, and for that sin he got my soul. He took me to his bed that night. I said I had cold feet, so he just held me as we slept. In the morning I remembered I had not thought to bring a toothbrush. He walked me halfway to the bus stop, and I walked as if in resurrection. We were 17, and I took the wine he gave to me. With the hiss of flesh around candlewick, he took the flame through his fingertips and pressed it onto me. As if I'd been made of clay, and, watching myself crumble, I found a man and made myself in his hands, but he sculpted me too much in his image, adorned in gold, dressed in cold civility, cased in ceramic, filled up with direst cruelty. Tongue turned well-spoken, well quickly, for he saw me as putty and elastic. What indents did not fade, what scarf or sleeve transparent. With his touches more and more goldly flaked from his knuckles, to be replated in the morning in apology. Gold teeth fell all out of his mouth to lodge into my skin where it should not bleed. He had a way of twisting things. My hand in his became my hand in his grip, bent back till I was shuddering one night. He'd had too much to drink. I said, boy, I need my hands to live, and boy, I breathe from my fingertips to touch him, to breathe him. I have seen that boy take life, and he has taken mine. I stand still, just out of the light of the street light, where I could see the stars, I wait for his claws to pull out of me, for him to spit back down my eyeballs that he took from their sockets with such ferocity. I tell myself that I will not miss him, but what would I be if I did not miss him? Did not flinch when every blonde and whistler was he, did not miss mystery bruises in bathroom mirror steam, did not cut my gums with scalpel blades tucked still behind my teeth. I held a boy last night and ran my fingers through his hair. We went to sleep in separate beds, with separate knives under separate heads. The next thing is a sequence of poems that, in my head I call them the ones that are about walking about places, and that's really what they are. So it's 4 poems, and the first one is Hometown. I walk at night to the nearby places. We are good at one-way roads in our house. Everyone forgets I can't hear right now. I fold my unclean clothes into a suitcase open on the desk. There's a bench where I used to sneak cigarettes, even though my parents know now and it's okay. I get confused about the word homesick, remind myself that isn't what this is, a stillness, things rearranging my unnoticed walks and muteness, the empty wardrobe, the open suitcase. 2. Paris. I walk in the dawn of the 3rd day awake, not wanting to sleep on the streets after all, not wanting to sleep on the streets anyway, but walking as if I have somewhere to go. The city litter of lamps drop their lights in a shudder, block by block. I shrug the night off as the night lingers lazy, as the blue spreads thinly in fear of the sun. I scatter the rats with toe taps and with lullabies. The sun pours, beating me along. Part 3 in Madrid. I walk with one shoulder in the sun. There's a man with his hat in the sand, blowing bubbles. Photographers, a Spanish guitar, kids running wide-eyed into child-sized bubbles. I want to stay with the sun as it sinks, to see the tarpaulin finish unfolding, to weigh down the dust, to walk across, to walk through the open opera house doors. Part 4 in Edinburgh. I walk in a pack, dragging down the main street in a city where I know very few road names. We get to our gate, shaky hands, sticky-faced, and have trouble with the locks once more. Yet, in the low light and with all the slow movements, and the mats that are laid out in rows past 20, and the plastic mats that are tacky to touch, and the ants that crawl I've only just noticed, where I lay down my head on my folded clean clothes, my belongings are counted and ordered beside me, and I brought more books than I could reasonably carry, and my sleeping bag cost £9.90. As we sing soft prayers to each other in the dark, some snore but some hear blink so loudly, I pray that the ants will also sleep soundly. The ants walk on, I walk on. So this is the one, I'll just say again, where I'm talking about retail, so it's been one to I feel like more when I say that to young people, everyone goes, oh yeah, same. But, the shift. My new job has marble floors. I colour the toes of my shoes permanent black, got new socks. I had to learn a new kind of smile. Friends tell me they never know what I'm thinking. I want them to think I'm thinking, how can I help you? There were these jade earrings hanging just out of my line of sight I had dreams about. I really coveted them. I couldn't see the price. I looked online, looked everywhere. Before the shift, I treated myself. Spent more than my day's wage on perfume. I can barely smell. Even so, I wanted the noises of the glass bottles on an imagined enamel tray. I wanted the sound of the unbought earrings too, the metal backs, and the dead cold of the stone flesh in the dark mornings, and warming them up in the steam of the tube. Thanks. importance of bookmarks. I don't know, I quite like this nice pause between a poem. Oh, this one. I used to be really bad at naming poems, and now I think I'm getting much better, so I don't know why I always introduce it, but I'm just so excited about the name of this poem, and sorry. Where's it gone? There we go. This poem is called When a Man and a Closet Love Each Other Very Much. It would be funny if I hadn't announced it like that. Anyway. Since before we met, you have been running in your dreams. You have been wrestling sheep to sheep. You have been nameless boy lying in dirt with boy before being startled and seeming to wake back into the house to smiles and girls, but you'd only ever lie with boys and dirt. Trying to run from dirt, you have been working hard in a school where no one knows you, painting the future, dead celebrities. I watch you paint walls and become a city. Outside, what lurks, aside from passion, places where no one knows what you do, blood brick city internships awaiting. A gentle moss can be so painful, a touch, apocalyptic. And yes, even me, I've been tempted to follow you into square-shouldered shadows, waves of concrete. The city doesn't sleep, doesn't feel like it should, doesn't give, receive, nothing illicit behind trees in Bonny Woods, no knocking on windows, no hiding bombs in secret hollows, no surprises, no rumours, at least not like the ones you get back home, that fly with great big gorgeous feathered wings, that blind, but knock you from pedestals. And I see the way you repeatedly fall, when we wake back up in the countryside drooling, and the lurchers land on us ready to play in the morning, and our feet are found bare on the stone-heated floor. When you say you hate, I look away, instead of looking between us, instead of standing and shouting, I'm still a faggot over here, even if you're not. And you'd sit there numbly shocked, or maybe yell, you're not, I'm not saying, I'm not. Instead, I want to know, when you let me wear your clothes, do you feel like you're holding me? And when I wear dresses and then you hold me, do you wear them in your dreams? And do you run? Thanks. I've got two more poems and they're shortish, but this one, I'm excited. It's the first time I'm reading it, and it doesn't have a name yet, and I always say this, and I have once used a name that an audience member has suggested. So if you think of any good names, do let me know. I will use it for free. Thank you. As of the untitled. I bring you glad tidings of breastbones. May they soon be plastic-wrapped dresses. A chandelier collapses into a blanket. On your shoulders, two bold, plump frogs flap back into lily pads. Christmas is coming, you hum Gabriel's message incessantly. You know nothing of religion. What you know is anticipation. You take white and blue pashminas, lay them on your chest, pray for immaculate vasectomy. You wake holding the scarves like flutes, and you find that what you're holding are just reels and reels of calendars. Thanks. And, sorry. See, I made you not clap by doing that. I need to get a less evil laugh. It's going to be great. The last one is a sonnet. Sonic rum, like the drink. And thank you for having me, and I'm really... it's been nice, hasn't it? Okay. Sonic rum. Rum and run through the house in loverhood, the light embodies oddly on the walls. He took me to the shower room. He stood beneath the shower. I stood by the door. His hands were steadier around the tap. Chrome heaven split. It came down with thunder. The water ran from his hair white with wax and landed upon his lips like hunger. He took off his clothes simply. He trod them sodden under his feet. I felt my shirt, his shirt, subtle on my shoulders. Cotton, tensed, he pulled me forwards. I saw the dirt this close on his nose, and I knew the melt of wet fabric onto skin, onto him. Thank you.
what a great first set. I've got a kind of confusing role now because there are two Gale Burns. There's one who's the host and one who's the poet. And it's always a bit strange introducing yourself, so I'm going to introduce myself and then read after the interval. And then I'll introduce Raymond, which is my main job. But this other Gale Burns lives in Forest Hill, writer-in-residence for Kingston, been writer-in-residence for Sydenham for many years, and previously Lewisham Hospital. He's won the special prize at the Ingija, everybody usually pronounces it wrong, but I got it right, the International Poetry Festival of Slovenia, convenes a long-running shuffle poetry series in Covent Garden, widely published 3 pamphlets and a new collection from Eyewear, and he's Vice President of the European Association of Creative Writing Programs. And Dino Mahoney says, and I didn't pay him for this, a feeling of passionate engagement tempered by poetic control. Which I think is a nice phrase. So that's after the interval. But to lead us up to the interval, I'm very delighted to welcome Raymond Antrobus. And I don't know where you are, Raymond. You're there, okay. I think it's fair to say that Raymond has something of a cult following. And I'm very delighted we managed to get him tonight. He's a British Jamaican, apologies, poet from Hackney. He's the author of To Sweeten Bitter and The Perseverance. He's the recipient of fellowships from Cave Canem, Complete Works 3. He's got an MA in Spoken Word Education from Goldsmiths. In 2018, he was awarded the Geoffrey Diemer Prize, and The Perseverance was PBS Winter Choice. Kwame Dawes, that well-done icon of poetry, says his monologues are stunning studies of voice and substance, and his lyric poems are graceful and finely crafted. Please welcome Raymond.
Hello. Hi everyone, how are you?
Good.
Good. Thanks for coming out on a Saturday evening to listen to us. I'm going to get straight into it. Thanks for Gale for inviting me, I appreciate that. I used to live around here when I was looking for cheap places to rent in London, and I was paying about £350 a month, staying in flats up the road, and I just walked past that same road that I used to live on, and I'm going to guess that it's not 350 quid anymore. Anyway, who here has been to Barcelona, by show of hands? Okay, that's most of you. Interesting. Okay. Who here has been to Gaudi's Cathedral in Barcelona? Again, slightly less. Who here has done the audio guide at Gaudi's Cathedral? That is nobody. All right. So, what happened in 2014? My dad, who I was very close with, passed away, and I had to just get out of London and go to somewhere where I didn't have any kind of memories, a place where I could just have a completely clean landscape. So I went to Barcelona on my own, and the first day I end up in Gaudi's Cathedral. And I'm obsessed with audio guides, partly because I'm deaf and I have an enviousness of hearing people who hear things without making any effort. And so I always feel like there's something I'm missing. And so the audio guide is this kind of compensation for me. And so the audio guide is set up in a really interesting way. Each part of the chapel, the cathedral, is numbered. And you stand by the number and you press the button and you listen, and it tells you the story about the particular construction of that part of the roof, or the walls, or the paintings. And I think it's number 2, where if you stand under it, it tells you that Gaudi had this obsession with acoustics, with sound, and that he believed that this particular part of the cathedral was this kind of divination, elevation of sound, which in his own words described as how angels would experience sound in this particular part. So you're invited to sing or shout and just be vigilant of how sound moves. And I'm having this experience through my hearing aids, through my Bluetooth, I'm pressing it in, and I'm wondering, are deaf people, am I included in this idea of the elevation of sound? And that is the question that led me through writing this entire book. That question is the thread throughout all of the perseverance. Both my grandparents were preachers. I think that's also worth knowing. Echo. 1. My ear ants whistle as if singing to echo, goddess of noise, the ravelled knot of tongues, of blaring birds, consonant crumbs, of dull doorbells, sounds swamped in my misty hearing aid tubes. Gaudi believed in holy sound and built a cathedral to contain it, pulling hearing men from their knees as though deafness was a kind of atheism. Who would turn down God? Even though I have not heard the golden decibel of angels, I have been living in a noiseless palace where the doorbell is pulsating light and I am able to answer. What? A word that keeps looking in mirrors in love with its own volume. What? I am a one-word question, a one-man patience test. What language would we speak without ears? What is paradise, a world where I hear everything? What? How will my brain know what to hold if it has too many arms? The day I clear out my dead father's flat, I throw away boxes of moulding LPs. Garvey, Malcolm X, Mandela, speeches on vinyl. I find a TDK cassette tape on the shelf. The smudged green label reads, Raymond speaking. I play the tape in his vintage cassette player and hear my 2-year-old voice chanting my name, Antrobus, and Dad's laughter crackling in the background, not knowing I couldn't hear the word bus and wouldn't until I got my hearing aids. Now I sit here listening to the space of deafness. Antrobus. 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 And if you don't catch nothing, then something wrong with your ears. They've been tuned to the wrong frequency. Kai Miller. So, maybe I belong to the universe underwater, where all songs are smeared wailings for Salacia, goddess of salt water, healer of infected ears, which is what the doctor thought I had, since deafness did not run in the family, but came from nowhere. So they syringed olive oil and salt water, and we all waited to see what would come out. And no one knew what I was missing, until a doctor gave me a handful of Lego and said to put a brick on the table every time I heard a sound. After the test, I still held enough bricks in my hand to build a house and call it my sanctuary, call it the reason I sat in saintly silence during my grandfather's sermons where he preached the good news I only heard as Babylon's babbling echoes. So, the last year and a half, I went to a deaf school called Blanche Neville in Highgate when I grew up. I got moved there when I was 11 years old, and I started speech therapy, hearing therapy, sign language, and I had, I don't know, a lot of shame about that, and a lot of kind of, I wanted to be hearing, basically. So I struggled with a lot of that stuff. Now I own it, and I work a lot with deaf young people around the UK. I've spent the last year and a half going to deaf schools, not just in the UK, but around the world, particularly in the Caribbean, which is where the other half of my family are from, even though many of us are born here and consider ourselves British Jamaicans. And I did a 6-month residence in the deaf school I went to as a kid. And I went to kind of take a temperature check almost to see how deaf young people are being perceived or how they're getting through our times. And what's happened is it's a very different landscape to when I went to school in the early 2000s. £4 million has been cut from deaf education just in the last year, and if deaf schools aren't being closed and they're shrinking, so I was in a school with 150 students, there's now 75 students in these schools. Even though statistically there are more deaf people being born, there are fewer avenues and fewer resources to help them develop language, sign and spoken. So anyway, I came across this, I found out a couple of days ago that I've been nominated for a Ted Hughes Award.
Right.
And there was, thank you, and like, I'm so honoured and privileged and stuff like that. But in the book, there's this poem about Ted Hughes. In the 70s, Ted Hughes was commissioned by the National Theatre to experience how people without language live. And so Ted Hughes decided to go into deaf schools and survey deaf children, because in his belief, deaf people don't have language. So we can already see the premise of it and the fuckery of it, right? So he writes this poem called Deaf School, where he describes deaf children as monkeys. He says deaf children are simple, unaware. He says they lack a dimension. He says that the deaf children's bodies were removed from the vibration of air. And so he calls us, he says that we're alert and simple. All of these pretty damning things. And I go into deaf schools and I always share that with deaf young people. And I had this version in the book where I had all of Ted Hughes' work written out, and you could read it, but then the Ted Hughes estate threatened to sue me, so I decided to put it in the book anyway, but redact it like this. So what I love about this one student is about 12 years old, from Hertfordshire. I showed him this, and he goes, "Oh, sir, turn it the other way." And I said, "What, like this?" He said, "Yeah." And he has cochlear implants. And he looks at this and he goes, "When they install my cochlear implant, the sound channels appear on the doctor's screen. They look exactly like this." And I just love that. So this poem I wrote after reading Ted Hughes' poem, Deaf School. And Ted Hughes is known, I suppose, you know, he's got some really good stuff. When I was a kid, I loved The Iron Giant. I love, the Iron Man and The Iron Woman, and the Crow, Hawk in the Rain. Like, he has had an impact on me. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to respond to Ted Hughes, how am I going to do it poetically? Extended metaphor. It has to be extended metaphor. I think it's Ted Hughes' strongest poetic tool. So I happen to be in New Orleans at the time, and I'm standing by the Mississippi River, and I decide that, infused by the energy of the river, I'm going to respond to Ted Hughes. So this is in the voice of the Mississippi River. No one wise calls the river unaware, or simple pools. No one wise says it lacks a dimension. No one wise says its body is removed from the vibration of air. The river is a quiet breath taker, gargling mud. Ted is alert and simple. Ted lacked a subtle waving aura of sound and responses to sound. Ted lived through his eyes, but I the colossal currents from the bridge, I riverboats ghosting a geography of fog. Mississippi means big river, named by French colonizers. The natives laughed at their arrogant maps, conquering wind and marking mist. The mouth of the river laughs. A man in a wetsuit emerges, pulls misty goggles over his head. Couldn't see a thing. He breathes heavily. My face was in darkness. No one heard him. The river drowned him out. all kinds of questions about, like, I don't know, people are obsessed with asking me about identity politics. They think it's all I write about. And I think that a lot of the conversation around that is superficial, meaningless, ill-informed. And someone asked me, a journalist asked me the other day, he said, how is it that you don't sound like anything other than an English poet? How is it that I read you and I see like T.S. Eliot and Wordsworth and all these things? And I thought, wow, what a thing to think that you can only be one thing. By show of hands, who here identifies as more than one thing? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I thought so. I thought so. Even if you're like a gardener and a man, like it's so reductive as thinking. So anyway, this is a poem in a kind of response to that. We're all going to join in with it. It uses the B word, and the B word is British. I like saying that because people usually think it's going to be Brexit. So when I do this to say the word British, this is a gazelle, a broken gazelle, where I just count how many syllables this particular Jay-Z verse uses and how many syllables a particular gazelle, which I love, uses, make them match, and then we get it. So just to have a quick test, 1, 2, 3.
British.
Amazing, thank you. Some people would deny that I'm Jamaican.
British.
Nose Anglo, hair straight, the way I'm Jamaican.
British.
They think I say I'm black when I say I'm Jamaican.
British.
But the English kids at school made me choose Jamaican.
British.
Half caste, half Neil, house slave Jamaican.
British.
Light skin, straight male, privileged Jamaican.
British.
Eat the callaloo, jerk chicken, I'm Jamaican. British don't know how to serve our dishes, they enslaved us. At school, I thought a boy in the lunch hall Jamaican. At home, I told Dad that I hate them, all them Jamaicans. I'm
British.
He laughed, told me you cannot love sugar and hate your sweetness, and took me straight to Jamaica. Passport.
British.
Cousins in Kingston called me Jar English, proud to have someone in their family.
British.
Plantation lineage, World War service. How do I serve Jamaican?
British.
When knowing how to war is Jamaican.
British.
Thank you. Let's try this. Has anyone here been to New Zealand? By show of hands. New Zealand, all right, Southern Hemisphere in the house. Big up the New Zealand crew, 1, 2 people. So I was in New Zealand. Was you in the North or the South Island, Gale?
Both.
Both? Are you lucky? Oh, I was only in the North, but I heard these amazing things about the South. And so my mum turned 70 years old while I was in New Zealand doing these readings. And I felt on my mum's birthday an intense amount of guilt and and loneliness. And I went for a walk in these forests, these Zealandia forests, and this happened. And like, it's the most intense thing about New Zealand is the sound. They have the most amount of bird species in the world, so the bird songs are wow. And I don't hear like birds without hearing it, so there's no way I can adjust. I just get this full-blown experience. And the thing is, these birds, they're not scared of people. They'll just come up to you and be like, wah! But then, like, that would be the first note, wah! And then the second note would be like, it's like the range they're hitting is amazing. Oh, I was in awe of them. So this poem is still new, I'm still working it out, but it's either going to be called On Loneliness or With Birds You're Never Lonely. I can't hear the barista over the coffee machine. Spoon slams, steam rises. I catch the eye of a man sitting in the corner of the cafe reading alone about trees, which is incidentally all I think about since returning. Last week I sat alone on a stump deep in Zealandia forest with sun-surreped kauri trees and brazen tui birds with white tufts and yellow and black beaks. They landed by my feet, blaring so loudly I had to turn off my hearing aids. When all sound disappeared, I was tuned into a silence that was not an absence. As I switched sound on again, silence collapsed. The forest spat all the birds back, and I was jealous. The earthy, cowrie trees, their endless brown and green sturdiness. I wonder what the trees would say about us. What books would they write if they chopped us down? Later, stumbling from the forest, I listened to a young Maori woman. She could tell which bird chirped, a skill she learned from her grandfather, who said, "With birds, you're never lonely." In that moment, I felt sorry for any grey tree in London, for the family they don't have, for gods they can't hold. Great. But she's American, so we've been in a long-distance relationship now for about 5 months. We used to live together. We've been together for 2 years. She's an art conservator. She used to work at the Tate. And now she's working in this really like high-end art gallery in Chelsea in New York, and she sends me the most incredible pictures. For those with dirty minds, not those pictures. She sends me the artwork that comes into her studio. She like, I've got pictures on my phone of like Rembrandts and Picassos and Basquiat's and Warhols, and like this is what I'm conserving. This is what I'm touching up today. Oh, anyway, I had that thing of being like, oh, I've proposed to you. I need to write you a poem, and I'm still working on it. But I thought I would try and read it tonight. She has heard the first draft of it, so she was the first person I shared it to. So it was intended for her, not for you. Apologies. But here we go. Let's. I'm going to sound it out. I've been too British for too long, meaning love, even if it fits, is a suit I squirm in. What do I need to let go of to be glass and grace? City and butterfly, fuel and sky. My first word to you in the Stuart Hall Lecture Library. Oh, hey, as in, who are you? Nothing implied love's beginning. No sun warming the windows, no fields of daffodils, just shy coffee cups in a room of red chairs. So who am I, now that I've seen between your toes? I've smelt your day's sock sweat, and still, I take you in, bending with you between the short arms of sofas. Last February, in Rudy's restaurant, you watched me eat, rushing my food as if in some private and restless race. Are you here? You asked, so slow it stopped my mouth when I began to taste the scrambled softness of ackee, the peppered brown rice and peas and the lit candle between us. I have never been more present with anyone in my life. Never been more soft when I say, I want to stay wherever you sleep. Look, love is too easy a word to let loose and the hardest to hold. When I say it, I come to you with every strength and split in this suit I cannot take off. So being in the States has meant that I've tried to learn some American Sign Language. Like spoken language, sign language is nationalistic, it's different all over the world. And some people probably know this, that even the alphabet in America is different. So the alphabet is all on one hand, and then in the UK it's two hands. So you can see how we're literally operating with a completely different language. And so when I go to the States, I try and pick up at least one new sign each time I go. And a couple of years ago, I came across this story about a man called Daniel Harris. And at the same time, I had, the word I'd learned that day was the word for alive. So alive or living in British Sign Language, some of you may know that living, alive, I live. But in American Sign Language, it's this. So, with that, having learned that, and then reading the story, It was 300 words on a CNN website. I knew it was a story I wanted to give a volume to. So this piece is called Two Guns in the Sky by Daniel Harris. When Daniel Harris stepped out of his car, the police officer was waiting, gun raised. I used the past tense, so this is irrelevant in Daniel's language, which is sign. Sign has no future or past tense, it is a present language. You are never more present when a gun is pointed at you. Now, what language says this if not sign? But the police officer saw hands waving in the air, fired, and Daniel dropped his hands, his chest bleeding out onto the concrete meters from his home. And I'm in New York coffee house reading this news on my phone when a black policewoman walks in, 2 guns on her hips. My friend next to me reading the comment section, Black Lives Matter. Now what could we sign or say out loud when the last word I learned in American Sign Language was alive? Alive. Both thumbs pointing at your lower abdominal. Index fingers pointing up, like 2 guns in the sky. Am I alright to do 2 more poems?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah, sure.
Is that alright with you?
Yeah.
Yeah? Great, thank you. I'm going to finish with 2 poems from the book. And it's, so The Perseverance is the name of the pub my dad used to drink in. It's in Hackney. And it's still there to this day. It's a pub like some areas actually in this area that just refuses gentrification. It refuses to acknowledge it. And there's a part of me that admires it, and there's a part of me that loathes it in a way. Because it's a strange pub, but I appreciate that it's literally been there my whole life, and I have these memories about it which show up in the book. So I'm going to read the title poem called The Perseverance, which is just a Stina. The 6 words that repeat: the perseverance, minute before, father, disappear, laughter. And yeah, like maybe if you had a parent who was alcoholic when you were growing up, you would have had lots of memories of just being left outside pubs. And yeah, my dad recovered, but when I was a kid, it was an intense problem. So this is called The Perseverance, and it opens with a word from Peter Tosh, who says, "Love is the man overstanding." I'll wait outside the Perseverance. Just popping in here a minute. I'd heard him say it many times before, like all kids with a drinking father. Watch him disappear into smoke and laughter. There is no such thing as too much laughter, my father says, drinking in the Perseverance until everything disappears. I'm outside counting minutes, waiting for the man, my father, to finish his shot and take me home before it gets dark. We've been here before. No such thing as too much laughter, unless you're my mother without my father, working weekends while the Perseverance spits him out for a minute. He gives me 50p to make me disappear. 50p in my hand, I disappear like a coin in a parking meter before the time runs out. How many minutes will I lose listening to the laughter spilling from the Perseverance while strangers ask, "Where is your father?" I stare at the doors and say, "My father is working." Strangers who didn't disappear but hugged me for my Perseverance. Dad said this would be the last time before. While the TV spilled canned laughter, us on the sofa in his council flat, knowing any minute the yams will boil, any minute I will eat again with my father, who cooks and serves laughter, good as any Jamaican, who disappeared from the island I tasted before overstanding our heat and Perseverance. I still hear, popping in for a minute, see him disappear. We lose our fathers before we know it. I'm still outside the Perseverance, listening for the laughter. Thank you so much for listening. This is my last poem. I'm going to be obviously here all night, listening to the rest of the poets, Joe Bell and Gale, and yeah, I think we've all got books, and so yeah, we'll be up for a chat. By a show of hands, who here has children? All right, cool, big up the parents. Who here, yes, who here reads to children? Like, even if they're not your own. Okay, cool, big up people who are reading to children. So, as you may know, there's a huge, long, complicated history around the world, particularly here, particularly in America, places where they became obsessed with the Enlightenment thing about what makes us human, and they decided that the thing that makes us human is language. That was one of the worst things that could have happened to the deaf community, because again, the understanding being that deaf people do not have language, therefore they are not human. So there's hundreds of years, and this stuff is archived all over the world, of deaf people or people with disabilities not being classed as human. So anyway, my dad was the person who read to me when I was growing up, and he or anyone in my family knew I was deaf. So at this point I was struggling to read, I was struggling to walk. I was very reserved, but I just wasn't hearing. And it wasn't until my mum bought this new telephone, and apparently it was really loud, and it rang, and she looks at the telephone, and she looks at me, and I'm not responding. She's like, oh, he's deaf. I mean, I suddenly get fast-tracked, I'm suddenly straight doing speech therapy, all this stuff, and things that are no longer in place, by the way, because of the cuts. For many people. And so I've always had this love of language and love of stories. And my dad would read me this book called Happy Birthday Moon. Does anyone here know this book, Happy Birthday Moon? So it's this book about this bear who lives out in the mountains, and everything this bear says is echoed. So he would stand out in the mountains and he'd go, hello. Come around and hear it again and go, hello, and say, oh, who's that? And then the moon appears, and it's night, and he's like, oh, it's my birthday today. It's my birthday. His voice travels around the mountains, and he comes back, and he hears it back. It's my birthday. And he looks up at the moon, he's like, it's the moon's birthday too. So the whole song, the whole story is this conversation between the moon and this bear. My dad would read it to me, and it's like very much like the earliest story I can remember being told, and I think about it a lot. I still have that book at home. But he did this thing to kind of mess with me a bit. He would like go onto a page where there was no text, and he'd put his finger along the page and just keep moving, and then he would like be talking anyway. The bear went onto the mountains, and the mountains said, what was that? It was dark. And I'm like, what is this text? It's an invisible text that you can see. So every night the story was different anyway. And I think he was just winding me up. But that was my dad, man. He was a funny man. Anyway, this is a pantoum. It's the last poem in the book. Thank you again for listening. Happy Birthday Moon. Dad reads aloud. I follow his finger across the page. Sometimes his finger moves past words tracing white space. He makes the moon say something new every night to his deaf son who slurs his speech. Sometimes his finger moves past words tracing white space. Tonight, he gives the moon my name, but I can't say it. His deaf son who slurs his speech. Dad taps the page, says, try again. Tonight, he gives the moon my name, but I can't say it. I say, Raynan Akabok. He laughs. Dad taps the page, says, try again. But I like making him laugh. I say my mistake again. I say, Raynan Akabok. He laughs, says, Raymond, there's something else. I like making him laugh. I say my mistake again. Raynan Akabok. What else will help us? He says, Raymond, there's something else. I'd like to be the moon, the bear, even the rain. Raynan Akabok. What else will help us hear each other, really hear each other? I'd like to be the moon, the bear, even the rain. Dad makes the moon say something new every night, and we hear each other, really hear each other. As Dad reads aloud a "Follow his finger" across the page.
Thanks a lot. That takes us to the interval. Just a couple of things before we break. Do buy, or take a look at and see if you want to buy books at the back. You can take orders of 10s or 20s. My brother has even bought a book of mine. He doesn't read poetry, but he's vowed to read a poem a night. And I think that's probably quite a good way. Some of them are about him, but he doesn't realise that. There's an email list. We will only write you very, very occasional emails, so don't worry. But if you would be happy to have your name down on this piece of paper, that would be helpful. If you want drinks, you need to go downstairs. We'll take about 15, 20-ish minutes. But meanwhile, let's just thank Connor and Raymond for a wonderful festival.